Hey, magical friends. Welcome back to the Lightning Bolt Chronicles. I am Christina McCrary on Facebook, aka Xtina McCrazy on TikTok, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. Beautiful co-host, please introduce yourself.
Hey guys, I am Erica, your local Hufflepuff. Okay, sorry. We've got, and this is Madon. Say hi, buddy.
Hello.
You're a Hufflepuff too, aren't you, my little boy? Yes.
Yeah.
I'm Erica.
He couldn't do anything else.
Yeah. I am your local Hufflepuff, and this is my little baby. This is my Poodle Noodle. And I'm Poodle Noodle 82 at the Instagrammy place.
If you are returning, thank you for continuing to watch. If you are new here, welcome, and we hope you enjoy. Do we have anything before we get into the chapter? Nothing to share? Nothing like that? No? Me neither.
No, I don't think so.
Okie dokie. Then we're going to jump right in, guys.
One little thing. If you want to see some hilarious candy making, jump over to I think his handle is x.c.potter. You could just go to my page and look at my stories, and I posted something that a nice friend of mine, I sent him some candy sushi, and he made it, and it is hilarious. He also does Harry Potter content. Check it.
Love that. Did you see? So I keep seeing posts about them casting for the TV show.
Yeah.
Did you see the rumored pick for Snape?
I didn't see it, but I heard about it, or I read about it, and people being up in arms about apparently him being a potentially black character.
Okay, so first of all, every single time there's a black character, people are potentially up in arms because it happens every single time. There was, well, you're not over here, so I don't know if you were part of or if you knew about the whole thing with Ariel when Halle Bailey was going to play Ariel in the live Little Mermaid. It's always a thing. There was even some backlash. Wicked is huge right now. And the witch who plays Elphaba is a black woman. And of course, people were up in arms about that. And it was so funny in the comments because people were like, she's green. It literally doesn't matter who it is because they're going to be painted green. Like, but that's par for the course. Every single time somebody is cast as a black person, there is an uproar. Here anyway. I don't know about anywhere else, but here there's always an uproar. But that wasn't the interesting thing to me. The interesting thing to me was, number one, yes, he was a black man. Not because I'm going to be up in arms. Of course not. I love seeing black people represented because but because the description of Snape is so very distinct. There's always talk about how he looks like a bat, how he has a long curved nose, how he has long stringy hair. So I'm interested to see how this black person will transform into the description of what Snape is supposed to look like. Also, he's an attractive black man, so that's going to be hard. I forgot his name. I don't know him. He's probably a British actor or something because I didn't know who he was, but he was an attractive black man.
Is that still the rule?
I don't know. I don't think so necessarily. I don't know. Because from what I understand, there are like tens of thousands of people auditioning. So that can't just be in the UK, can it? I mean, I guess it could. I don't know. I mean, but I would imagine as huge as Harry Potter is, there might be people traveling to the UK to audition also. You know what I mean? Maybe. I don't know. I just found it interesting from the standpoint of how Snape is very much described physically, which really matches his personality kind of, because he's bat-like in every physically, mentally, personality-wise, like he's bat-like.
Yeah.
And so I think it'll be interesting to see how they could make a black man become Snape.
He is a British actor.
Okay.
He's British.
Well, I figured as much because I know most of the ones here. So, because, you know, there's far less than the other actors, but especially attractive ones.
How are they going to make his nose hooked? And
that was why it was of interest to me. Looking at that face and being like, how are they going to make him look like Snape? So I just thought it was interesting.
I'm interested to see I'm interested to see what other roles he's played. Like, I want to go and take a look and see his acting chops. His face can look like he's got a lot of different faces. From what I see, his face can look really like upbeat, very like comforting, kind of welcoming. And then he also has a little bit of that like kind of sexy, mysterious kind of vibe going on, but like,
but not sallow, pale, hook-nosed, greasy-haired.
Well, but can he be that like somber, kind of pulled back, hollowed out kind of feel, you know?
Guess we'll have to see. I just thought it was interesting because, like I said, I'm always down for adding more black characters, but I just thought Snape was an interesting pick for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. There you go.
Anyway. We are, this is Chronicle 2-7, meaning that we are in Chamber of Secrets, which is book 2, and we are doing chapter 7, title of which, Erica?
Mudbloods and Murmurs.
Mudbloods and Murmurs. Dun, dun, dun. And
However,
we are calling this episode Better In Than Out. And you'll understand why. Oh, better. Yeah, that completely changes the context, doesn't it? Better out than in. Sorry. Oh, your face was great. Okay. We're calling this episode Better Out Than In.
That's the ticket.
And once we go through the chapter summary, you'll fully understand why. All right. So
we got some new characters.
We do. Erica, tell us who the new characters are. Why do I always forget new characters and just get ready to jump right into the chapter?
Because you're excited and you just want to get into the chapter.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
They are mentions as of now, right? So we have Gladys Gudgeon and Veronica Sneffley, and they are, as we will find out later in the chapter, just mentioned by Gilderoy Lockhart.
As some of his biggest fans.
He is some of his biggest fans. And then our third character, as of now, is just a voice. That's all. That's all we're going to say right now.
Dun, dun, dun.
Oh,
Things are getting creepy. All right.
yeah.
So, at the end of the last chapter, they had captured the classroom full of Cornish pixies, and Ron and Harry were less than thrilled with Mr. Charming, Gilderoy Lockhart. And Hermione was still defending him with his, oh, it's just hands-on magic, guys. Do you know all the wonderful things he's done? So this chapter starts letting us know that over the next few days, Harry did everything he could to dodge, dive, and completely avoid running into Mr. Gilderoy Lockhart. He don't want nothing to do with that man.
However, he has a new shadow as well.
And so it's a little harder to avoid little Mr. Colin Creevey because he is a Gryffindor, so he's in the dorm, he's in the common room. He's, you know, when you're at the table, you're broken up by house, he's at the Gryffindor table. Little Mr. Colin Creevey is very smitten with Mr. Harry Potter. And it says that nothing seemed to give Colin a bigger thrill than to say, "You all right, Harry?" 6 or 7 times a day and hear, "Hello, Colin," back. Even if Harry was exasperated when he said it. So, like, Harry's now in his 2nd year. And in addition to having Mr. 5-time Witch Weekly's Charming Smile winner telling him he's nobody, he also has a first year following him around with a camera, constantly trying to get his attention and very much his biggest fan.
And also trying to constantly get his autograph.
Oh, yes. Yes. Wanting Harry to sign a doggone picture.
And Harry, you can only see his elbow.
Right.
Because Gilderoy is like trying to pull him into the picture, and Harry was reluctant. So all you can really see is his elbow.
Harry stands on business. Harry is not signing a photo.
Yeah.
And Colin keeps asking, and Harry will not sign a photo. It doesn't matter which photo it is, whether it's that photo of his elbow or some other photo that Colin's gotten randomly while they're moving about the school or whatever else. Harry is not signing photos. He's just not. Because he won't do it.
Just so that you guys know, Colin has a Muggle camera with film in it, right? A Muggle camera. But apparently, it seems, according to what we understand from the development of the film from the last chapter, you just develop it in a special solution. So, like, everybody uses Muggle cameras. And you just develop it in this particular solution so that then it has movement.
That's what I understood it to mean. It's in the development that makes the pictures move.
Okay. But then how come they talk and stuff too then?
I don't know. Because those are also different photos than the usual photos. You know what I mean? Like,
or those are paintings.
Maybe. That's what I was going to say. Because they're portraits and they're paintings on the wall. And those ones talk and you can interact with them and all that. But like when Hagrid gave Harry the photo album, his parents don't talk to him. The photos move, but his parents don't talk to him or anything like that. So
okay, so there's a difference between portraits, actual paintings, and
pictures.
The pictures. Interesting.
That's what I'm guessing.
Okay.
Anyway, so as we're getting caught up, so Harry's avoiding Gilderoy Lockhart, can't avoid Colin Creevey, but exasperatedly dealing with him multiple times a day. Hedwig's still mad at Harry from the car incident when they landed at Hogwarts and crashed into the tree. Ron's wand is still malfunctioning because it's broken and taped together with Spello tape. And sadly, Friday morning, it shot out of Ron's hand in Charms class and hit poor Professor Flitwick squarely between the eyes, creating a throbbing green boil. So Ron's doing great. Harry's having the time of his life.
They're off to a great start.
Yeah, we're swinging into the new school year, just doing great. So Saturday morning, they get ready to go. They're planning to go see Hagrid, but suddenly at the crack of dawn, Harry's getting woken up kind of aggressively. And he's like, what's the matter? And he opens his eyes, and it is Wood.
Mm-hmm.
Wood's the captain of the Quidditch team. And he's like, come on, it's time for Quidditch practice. Literally the crack of dawn. It's still dark outside. So he tells Oliver, he's like, it's the crack of dawn. And Wood's like, yeah, exactly. I've got a new training program. We're going to get a jump on it. We're going to win this year. Oliver Wood is a little gung-ho when it comes to his Quidditch team.
Well, and he's super jaded about the fact that they lost the year before because Harry was in the hospital.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
My favorite thing that it said is that Gryffindor team suffered their worst defeat in 300 years. I thought that was hilarious.
So Oliver is determined, as he says, to be the first off the mark this year. So he's ready. It's the crack of dawn. Come on, Harry, get up, get dressed. And Harry's like, yeah, all right, I'll meet you down there. And Oliver's like, yeah, good man, let's go. Meet you on the field in 15 minutes. So he gets his robes on and he leaves a note for them, throws his broomstick over his shoulder and heads out to the pitch. And before he can even clear the portrait hole door, all he hears is Colin Creevey coming running down the spiral staircase right behind him. Hey, I heard somebody saying your name. Look, I've developed a picture I want to show you. And Harry kind of looks at it, and this is where we get the description that the photograph is pretty much just Harry's elbow because Harry's fighting Gilderoy Lockhart the whole time to not be in the picture. And Colin, of course, once again asks Harry to sign it, and Harry's like, yeah, no. He's like, yeah, sorry, I'm in a hurry. I got to get to Quidditch practice. And as he climbs to the hole, Colin's like, oh, wow. All right, wait for me. I've never been to a Quidditch game before. So he does not get rid of Colin, who follows him down to the field. And as they're walking, Colin's asking questions. And so Harry, because, still a first year, still a kid, still learning the magical stuff or whatever, he answers all of Colin's questions and kind of gives him in a nutshell of what the game is and which balls there are and how the game works and all this other stuff so that Colin can kind of understand how the game goes. And so they chit chat about that as they get down to the pitch. And then when they get down there, Harry's finally like, oh, well, gotta go, and slips into the changing rooms and finally gets rid of Colin. But Colin says, oh, no, find a good seat, and goes off to the stands. So he's not fully rid of him, but he doesn't have to really talk to him anymore. The rest of the team is already inside. They're barely awake, and Fred and George have puffy eyes and their hair's still tousled, and they're sitting there with Alicia, who's nodding off against the wall behind her, and Katie and Angelina are yawning. And Oliver's like, oh, all right, there you are, Harry. What kept you? And I wanted to have a quick talk with you guys, and I think I've developed this playbook over the summer that's going to be really great for all of us. And he launches into this dialogue, and he's got a board, and everybody's like, But it's not just one board. After he explains the first board with all the X's and arrows and all of that stuff, he's got 2 more boards behind that. So by the time he gets through all of the stuff that he wants to do, basically the team is sitting there asleep because it's the crack of dawn. And Oliver chose to start practice with a very long monologue and boards of X's and O's. So then he's like, all right, any questions? And Fred's like, couldn't you have told us this yesterday when we were awake?
Yeah.
Which does not amuse Wood, but he tells them, look, we should have won the Quidditch Cup last year. We're easily the best team, but unfortunately, due to circumstances beyond our control, of course, beyond their control being that Harry was in the hospital and could perform at the time. So this year, we're going to train harder than ever before. Let's go. Let's get these theories I've just talked to you about into practice. And so they're still yawning, but they get up and they start to head out onto the field. And the sun's completely up now. And there's a few more people in the stands, and Ron and Hermione are there, and they're like, dang, aren't you finished yet? And Harry's like, dude, we haven't even started yet. And they have toast and jam in their hands, and Harry's jealous because he's been up since the crack of dawn sitting in there and hasn't eaten anything yet. And so he gets on his broomstick, and Harry always loves when he gets on his broomstick. Like, he can feel like total crap, but the moment he kicks off on his broom, he's like, it's like natural to him. It's his favorite place to be. Mm-hmm. So he gets on his broom and everybody's on the pitch and they're like, great, look at us. We're outside, whatever. And Fred's like, hey, what's that weird clicking noise?
It's Harry's shadow.
Of course, Harry looks over to the stands and it's Colin in one of the highest seats just going nuts with his camera. Clicking away. Clicking away. And he's like, Harry, look over here, this way. And Fred's like, who's that? And Harry's like, I have no idea. And he speeds off down the pitch so that he's as far away from Colin as possible. And then Wood, all of a sudden, because, you know, Wood's a little obsessed. So he's like, who's that? He could be a Slytherin spy. And that's when Harry's like, no, he's a Gryffindor. Admits that he kind of knows who he is, because poor thing. And that's when George says, and Slytherin doesn't need a spy, Oliver. And Wood's like, what do you mean? And George is like, they're here in person. And he points. And so they look down, and the Slytherin team is coming onto the pitch. Uh-oh. And Wood is outraged. I can't believe this. And so he goes down. He's like, I booked the field for today. We'll see about this. So he shoots down toward the ground and lands a little harder than he meant to because, you know, he's outraged. Yeah. He staggers a little bit, and Fred and George, not to be left out of any melee, of course, go down and follow him as well. And so Wood yells at the Slytherin captain, Flint, this is our practice time. We got here specially. You clear off now. And Flint kind of gives him a cunning smile, and he's like, there's plenty of room for all of us, Wood. And now the girls have come over, Angelina and Katie and Alicia, and they're like, what's going on? And Wood's like, I booked the field. I booked it. And Flint's like, yeah, but we've got a specially signed note here. And he pulls a note out of his pocket, and it says, I, Professor S. Snape, give the Slytherin team permission to practice today on the Quidditch field, owing to the need to train their new seeker. Bum, bum, bum. And Wood's like, huh? You got a new seeker? Where? And from behind these 6 super huge dudes comes this small, platinum blonde, pointy-chinned boy. Who else but our lovely Draco Malfoy?
I don't know about lovely.
Fred immediately is like, aren't you Lucius Malfoy's son? And he says it with dislike. And Flint says, it's funny you should mention Draco's father. Let me show you the generous gift he's made to the Slytherin team. And all 7 of them kind of show their broomsticks, and they have 7 brand new, shiny Nimbus 2001s. Now remember, up until this point, Harry had the best broom out there, and it's a Nimbus 2000. So now the Slytherin team has 7 brand new Nimbus 2001s.
Right.
And Flint says, oh, it's the very latest model. It only came out last month. I believe it outstrips the old 2000 series by a considerable amount. And as for the old clean sweeps, where he smiles nastily at Fred and George because Fred and George are both holding clean sweep 5s.
Yeah.
Sweeps the boards with them. So none of the Gryffindor team, they're all in shock. They can't think of anything to say. And Malfoy's just standing there smirking with his cold eyes. And Ron and Hermione come and start crossing the grass. And Flint says, oh, look, a field invasion. And Ron asks Harry, what's happening? Why aren't you playing? What's he doing here? Talking about Malfoy, of course. And Malfoy, because he just can't help it. I'm the new Slytherin seeker, Weasley, he says with a smirk. Or he says smugly. Everyone's just been admiring the brooms my father's bought our team. And of course, Ron, being up on Quidditch and broomsticks and all that, knows exactly what they are at first glance, gasps open mouth, and, you know, is admiring these 7 beautiful, superb broomsticks right in front of him. And Malfoy says, good, aren't they? But perhaps the Gryffindor team will be able to raise some gold and get new brooms too. You could raffle off those Queen Sweep 5s. I expect a museum would bid for them. And the Slytherins, of course, laugh. At which point Hermione jumps in and says, at least no one on the Gryffindor team had to buy their way in. They got in on pure talent. And this pisses Malfoy off, so the smug look kind of flickers, but then he says, no one asked for your opinion, you filthy little mudblood. Now, the book is from Harry's perspective, so the next line says, Harry knew at once that Malfoy had said something really bad, because there was an instant uproar at his words.
Mm-hmm.
Harry don't have no idea what's been said. He don't know nothing about it. But Flint had to dive in front of Malfoy because Fred and George tried to jump on him. Alicia shrieked, how dare you? And Ron plunged his hand into his robe and pulled out his wand, yelling, you'll pay for this, Malfoy, and pointed it furiously under Flint's arm at Malfoy's face. Now, remember, Ron's wand doesn't particularly work, and it's spello taped together. So, a loud bang goes off, and a jet of green light shoots out of the wrong end of Ron's wand. So instead of hitting Malfoy, it hits Ron, backfires on him instead, hits him in the stomach, and he goes reeling backwards onto the grass. And Hermione's squealing and goes running over. And Ron opens his mouth to speak, but he belches, and several large slugs come dribbling out of his mouth.
Yum.
So the Slytherin team, of course, is like just, they're dying of laughter at this point. They think it's the most hilarious thing ever. Flint was doubled over, hanging onto his broomstick. Malfoy's on all fours, banging his fist on the ground. But the Gryffindors kind of gather around Ron to make sure he's okay, but he keeps just belching up these large, glistening slugs. He's slugs. Nobody wanted to touch him. And then all of a sudden, Harry's like, we better get him to Hagrid's. It's the closest place. He'll know what to do. And so Hermione nods bravely and helps Harry kind of pick him up. And then all of a sudden, because his timing is friggin' impeccable, here comes Colin Creevey. What happened, Harry? What happened? Is he ill? Can you cure him? Can't you? And so He's there, and Ron gives a huge heave, and more slugs dribble out of his mouth. At which point, Colin's like, "Oh, can you hold him still, Harry?" And puts his camera up, and this pisses Harry off. Get away, Colin! And then he and Hermione start taking Ron out of the Quidditch pitch, and they take him down to Hagrid's hut.
Yeah.
And Hermione trying to be all comforting, and she's like, "We're nearly there, Ron. You'll be all right. It's okay." And so when they get to Hagrid's house, they're about 20 feet away when the door opens. But instead of Hagrid coming out, our new favorite, charming winner of the 5-time Witch Weekly Charming Smile winner comes out the door. And Harry's like, "Oh, quick, behind here." And they duck, like, behind a bush, because Harry still don't want to be bothered with Mr. Lockhart. Not at all.
Yeah. No,
So
not at all.
they jump behind a bush, and Hermione's a little reluctant, but even still. And then they hear, as he's leaving the cabin, Mr. Lockhart telling Hagrid, very loudly, of course, "It's such a simple matter, and if you need help, you know where I am, and I'll let you have a copy of my book. Surprised you haven't already got one. I'll sign one for you tonight and send it over. Well, come on then." And he strides off toward the castle, and Harry waited until he was completely out of sight before allowing them to come out from behind the bush and pulling Ron out and going to Hagrid's door. So they knock on the door, and when Hagrid comes, he looks a little grumpy, but when he sees them, his expression changes. And he's like, "Oh, hey, I've been wondering when you guys were going to come and see me. Come in, come in." I thought it might have been Professor Lockhart back again. So Harry and Hermione help Ron into the house, and they go inside, and Hagrid doesn't seem particularly perturbed by, I love this because of the way it's worded. It says, Hagrid didn't seem perturbed by Ron's slug problem. It's just so very oversimplified. It's
Well, but he's an adult in the wizarding world. He is works at a school, right? So like I'm sure he's well used to it. Like he's seen crazier, far crazier things.
That's true. And he does he's the groundskeeper, so he's messing with magical creatures all day long when he goes into the forest and stuff like that. So yeah. I guess slugs are nothing to him.
No.
So he doesn't seem at all bothered by Ron's problem, which Harry is, explaining to him. And cheerfully he says, better out than in. Which is, of course, where we got the title for this chronicle. And so he gives Ron a big old bucket, and he's like, here, just get them all out. No biggie. And then starts, regular conversation as they wait for Ron to just belch up all his slugs.
Yep.
So Hagrid goes and starts making them tea, and Fang's slobbering all over Harry, and Harry's like, so what did Lockhart want? And Hagrid's like, oh, he's giving me advice on getting kelpies out of a well. And Hagrid growled a little and scrubbed the table a little hard and continued on, like I don't know, and banging on about some banshee he banished. If one word of it was true, I'll eat my kettle. So now Hagrid...
Yet another teacher. Right? Yet another teacher. Hagrid is not the first teacher. Yet another teacher that Lockhart goes and gives very unsolicited advice to.
Is Hagrid a teacher yet? Doesn't he become a teacher later?
Yet another adult on the premises who he goes and gives unsolicited advice to.
And we know that Hagrid is very loyal to Hogwarts and its faculty. And so it even goes on to say it's very unlike Hagrid to criticize a Hogwarts teacher. Mm-hmm. And so Harry was quite surprised to hear this take. And Hermione, of course, is still defending Professor Lockhart. So she's like, I think you're being a bit unfair. Professor Dumbledore obviously thought he was the best man for the job. And Hagrid's like, he was the only man for the job.
Yeah. I love how Hagrid always spills the tea with the kids. Well, with his kids.
Well, Hagrid's very authentic. He doesn't try to put on airs. He doesn't try to sugarcoat anything. He's just very Hagrid.
Yes,
and so
he does not invite other students into his cabin all the time. Like, it's always them three. It's never
well, but I mean, they're friends, and he's being himself with his friends. Is the point I was making behind that?
Yeah.
Even though they're now 12 years old, still just 12-year-old kids.
There are some really messed up memes on the internet about that.
About Hagrid and 12-year-olds?
Yeah. How come, like, dear Professor Dumbledore, why do you not say anything about a grown man in the woods hosting 3 students, like, constantly without supervision or, like, whatever, you know?
Because it's Hagrid. He's not dumb, but he's half giant, so he's not. The internet is an ugly, ugly place.
I mean, to an outsider's perspective, that happens, and it's a little bit suspect, you know?
Yeah, but if you know Hagrid, then you totally, like, it doesn't even ruffle any feathers at all, because it's Hagrid. It's like, he thinks a dragon is a cute little pet. Come on! It's Hagrid! Like, anyway, so Hagrid's like, no, literally, he was the only man for the job. It's getting really difficult to find anybody to take the dark arts job because they're starting to think it's jinxed.
Yeah.
No one's lasted for longer than a year. And then he says, all right, well, he changes the subject and he nods his head over at Ron. He's like, so who was he trying to curse anyway? And so that's when Harry's like, Malfoy called Hermione something, and it must have been really bad because everyone went wild. Because Harry still has no idea what this is about. And this is where Ron is like, he's finally able to talk in between slugs, I guess, because he's like, it was bad. And he comes out from over the bucket, and he's pale and he's sweaty. And he says, Malfoy called her a mudblood, Hagrid. And then he dives back down under the table because there's more slugs coming up. And Hagrid looks outraged. And Hagrid says, he didn't, to Hermione. And Hermione's like, he did. And this is one of the very few things in the book anyway Hermione has no idea about. She's like, I don't know what it means. I could tell it was really rude, of course. And so Ron, who's over his last batch of slugs coming up, pops back up again, and he's like, it's about the most insulting thing you can think of. He says, mudblood's a really foul name for someone who is muggle-born. You know, non-magic parents. There are some wizards, like Malfoy's family, who think they're better than everyone else because they're what people call pure blood. Then he gives a small burp and another little slug comes out before he can continue. He kind of catches it in his hand and tosses it in the bucket. Then he's like, I mean, the rest of us know it doesn't make any difference at all. Look at Neville Longbottom. He's pure blood. He's pure blood, and he can hardly stand a cauldron up the right way. And then Hagrid says, well, huh?
I said, very true.
Yeah, poor Neville. He's having some trouble, and he's a pureblood. And then Hagrid points out, and they haven't invented a spell that our Hermione can't do. And he kind of says it really proudly toward Hermione, and she, turns magenta. And then Ron says, it's a disgusting thing to call someone. Dirty blood, see? Common blood. It's ridiculous. Most wizards these days are half-blood anyway. If we hadn't married muggles, we'd have died out. And then he retched and ducked back into his bucket again. And then Hagrid says, well, I don't blame you for trying to curse him, Ron, but maybe it was a good thing your wand backfired. I expect Lucius Malfoy would have come marching up to the school if you'd cursed his son. At least you're not in trouble. And Harry's like, I'm not really sure throwing up slugs is not trouble, but okay, we'll let that pass. So then Hagrid turns to Harry and he's like, I got a bone to pick with you. I've heard you've been giving out signed photos. How come I haven't got one? And Harry is pissed. Immediately he's furious. And he's like, I have not been giving out signed photos. If Lockhart is spreading that around, and then he looks over and he sees that Hagrid's laughing. Hagrid's just giving him crap. And he's like, I'm only joking. I knew you hadn't been. He said, I told Lockhart you didn't need to. You're more famous than him without trying. And Harry immediately is like, oh, bet he didn't like that too much. And Hagrid's like, no, I don't think he did. Eyes twinkling, happy that he said something that guy didn't like. And I told him I'd never read one of his books, and he decided to go.
I love how he was just like, the next thing is like, oh, nothing he just said really mattered. He's like, treacle toffee, Ron?
Yeah. He's like, yeah, Ron, you want some treacle toffee? And Ron's like, yeah, no, better not risk it. And then he's like, all right, well, come on, you guys, come see what I've been growing. And he takes them out to the pumpkin patch where he's got these huge pumpkins growing out there. And Harry's like, what have you been feeding them? And Hagrid's like, oh, I've been giving them a little bit of help. He's not really supposed to use magic, but he always does and manages to get away with it. And then Hermione's like, what, were you using an engorgement charm? And she's half disapproving, but half amused. And she said, well, you've done a good job on them. Hagrid says, well, that's what your sister said. I met her yesterday, looking at Ron and letting him know. And then Hagrid's beard's twitching because he's teasing Harry again. And he says, she said she was just looking up around the grounds, but I think she was hoping that she might run into a particular person at my house. Because if you ask me, she wouldn't say no to a sign. And Harry's like, dude, shut up, please. Just stop. Ron starts laughing, and then
Ron snorted with laughter and sprayed slugs everywhere.
And Hagrid's like, hey, watch your pumpkins, and pulls Ron away. So now it's nearly lunchtime, and Harry hasn't eaten at all, except for treacle toffee since dawn, because this whole thing happened with him getting pulled out of bed.
Right.
So they say goodbye to Hagrid, and they start heading back to the school. And as they are stepping into the entrance hall, they run into Professor McGonagall, and she's like, oh, there you are, Potter and Weasley. You both have your detentions this evening. And Ron says, uh-oh, what are we doing, Professor? And he nervously suppresses a burp because I don't think he wants Professor McGonagall to see him belching smells, because then she'll ask what happened, and then they'll have to talk about it, and he don't want that. So she says, you will be polishing the silver in the trophy room with Mr. Filch. And no magic, Weasley. Elbow grease. Ron gulps. And then you, Potter, will be helping Professor Lockhart answer his fan mail. And Harry's like, oh, God, no, not... Professor, can't I just go to the trophy room, too? And Professor McGonagall's like, no, certainly not. Professor Lockhart requested you specifically. 8 o'clock sharp, both of you. And so they slouch off to the Great Hall. And Hermione, as per usual, she's wearing her, well, you did break the school rules sort of expression on her face. And then Harry didn't really enjoy his lunch too much. And both he and Ron felt like they both got the worst out of the deal. And Ron's like, oh, God, I'm going to be there all night. Filch will have me there all night. There's 100 cups in that room, and I'm no good at muggle cleaning. And Harry's like, dude, I would swap with you in a heartbeat because I have plenty of practice from living with the Dursleys. So muggle cleaning is like nothing to me. Remember, we talked about it that last summer where he painted the garden bench and pulled the weeds and planted new flowers and all kinds of stuff while Dudley just sat on the couch. Yeah, he's... What? Shine some silver cups? Okay, yeah, no problem. But nope, he's got to go and answer Lockhart's fan mail. And all he can think of is how much of a nightmare this is going to be, because he's been trying to avoid this guy as much as possible. And now it's just going to be the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
So Saturday afternoon went by way too fast. And next thing you know, it's 5 minutes to 8. And he's dragging himself along as slowly as he can to Professor Lockhart's office, grits his teeth, and knocks. And the moment he knocks, the door flies open, like Lockhart's been waiting for him. And he's beaming down at him. And he's like, "Oh, here's the little scallywag. Come in, Harry. Come in." So Harry goes in, and there's a large pile of pictures on the desk that Gilderoy Lockhart is in the process of signing. He's signed a few over here, and then there's a big old pile. And he's like, "You can address the envelopes."
Mm-hmm.
And he said it like it was a huge treat. And that's when we hear about, "Oh, here, this first one's to Gladys Gledgeon. Bless her. She's a huge fan of mine." And the minutes went by really, really slowly. Like, not as fast as Saturday afternoon, which they could have enjoyed. But no. Slowly, slowly, because now here he is with Professor Lockhart. And he's...
that's always how it is, right?
Yeah. Oh, God. So
whatever
much
it is
so.
that you dread, time goes by like at a snail's pace. And when you really are
having a good time.
Yeah.
So the whole time, of course, because that's what he does, Professor Lockhart is just running his mouth. And Harry's like, "Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, right. Uh-huh, yeah." Like, not even listening and just kind of interjecting some sounds like he's listening.
And
now and then...
on
yeah,
and on about...
Oh, the man loves to hear himself talk.
Yeah, exactly.
So he's just going on, and Harry's not paying attention to any of it. Okay, yeah, right. Yeah. And every so often, Harry will get a little gem like, "Fame's a fickle friend, Harry," or "Celebrity is as celebrity does. Remember that."
That's so funny.
And Harry's moving his aching hand over the 1,000th envelope, which is Veronica Smethly's envelope. And he's like, "God, it's got to be nearly time to leave. Please let it be nearly time to leave." And then all of a sudden he hears something. And it's not the dying candles, and it's not Hogwarts. It's not Lockhart prattling on about his fans. It's a separate and distinct voice. A voice to chill the bone marrow. A voice of breathtaking, ice-cold venom. And the voice says, come to me. Let me rip you. Let me tear you. Let me kill you." And so Harry jumps, and unfortunately he leaves the large lilac splot on Veronica Smethly's.
Yes, of course. Gilderoy Lockhart was using lilac-colored ink. I loved that.
And having Harry fill out the envelopes in lilac-covered ink.
Of course.
And he says, "What?" And Lockhart's like, "I know! 6 solid months at the top of the bestseller list. I broke all the records." And Harry's like, "Dude, no. That voice. Did you not hear this voice?" And Lockhart's like, "Sorry, what?" He looks all puzzled. And he's like, "What voice?" And he's like, "You didn't hear the voice." Harry's like, "You didn't hear it." And Lockhart's just kind of looking at Harry in astonishment. And he's like, "What are you talking about, Harry? Maybe we're getting a little drowsy." "Great Scott, look at the time." And they realize that it's midnight. And so Lockhart's like, "Oh my goodness, we've been having so much fun. Oh, you might as well go ahead and get going," or whatever the hell. And Harry's like, "Yeah." But he's straining his ears to see if he hears the voice again. Can't believe that Lockhart didn't hear the voice and doesn't know where it's coming from. So he's a little discombobulated as he leaves the room. So now it's super late. He heads back to the Gryffindor common room. And of course, it's almost empty because it's after midnight. He goes straight up to the dormitory, but Ron isn't back yet. So he pulls on his pajamas and gets into bed and waits for Ron, who gets there half an hour later, nursing his right arm because he has had to use complete and utter elbow grease for the last 4 hours to polish the cups in the trophy room, and he completely smells like polish. And he's like, oh my God, my muscles have all seized up. And 14 times he made me buff the Quidditch cup before he was satisfied. And then I had another slug attack all over a special award for service to the school. Took ages to get the slime off. And he's like, so, how was it with Lockhart? And then, of course, Harry, not wanting to wake up Neville, Dean, or Seamus, and doesn't really want to be heard, tells Ron about the voice that he heard. And Ron's like, and Lockhart couldn't hear it? And Harry sees it, is like, yeah, like, that's weird. And Ron's like, well, do you think he was lying? But I don't get it. Even someone invisible would have had to open the door. And Harry's like, yeah, I know. I don't get it either. And that's the end of chapter 7. Our poor Harry is hearing voices.
Uh-oh.
Okay. Literally, this scene in the movie is maybe 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Because I went back and I looked at the timing. But do you want to tell them about what you book versus movied?
So, half of it. Pretty much half
Pretty
of it.
much all of it. Pretty much all of it.
I mean, yeah. I would have loved to see Ron's wand hit Flitwick in the face. I mean, that would be very disrespectful. I know, but it would have been hilarious.
So sweet, but him being so little, he just gets the end of the short straw so many times.
Yeah. And then, of course, that whole early wake-up call from Oliver Wood didn't happen. His entire conversation with Colin Creevey about Quidditch, about the picture, and all of that, like his whole walk down to the pitch didn't happen in the movie. Oliver's pep talk, Oliver's 3 boards of new Quidditch, whatever, his plan, none of that happened. We basically, in the movie, go straight from the Pixies to the pitch and, well, to talking to the Slytherin team.
Like, the next scene starts, instead of Wood coming up and waking them up, like after the Pixies, when it switches scenes, the very next scene is the entire Gryffindor Quidditch team in the corridor heading out to go to the pitch, all in uniform already.
Yeah. And that's when they run into the Slytherin team, and they do have that discussion about the new brooms and the new seeker and all of that, and having the note, having permission to practice, all that stuff that is in the movie. But then here's something that I thought was really interesting. In the book, Ron performs a silent charm that, of course, backfires, but he performs a silent charm, whereas in the movie he says eat slugs, right? So I mean, I understand that for movie effect purposes it's better for him to say eat slugs, but again, book Ron, it shows a different level of ability that we don't get to see in the movie. They dumb his character down so much in the movie. He's just Harry Potter's dumb sidekick, basically. But in reality,
because silent spells are advanced magic.
Yes, they don't teach us. We're not going to learn about silent spells.
I was going to say, they don't teach about those until later.
Exactly. And he's already
Even though it backfired, but it still worked.
With the proper wand, it would have worked, right? Which is, I thought, something really interesting to note. That whole like chat that Hagrid had about Lockhart, Lockhart being at the cabin, the Kelpie advice, us finding out that there's only that Lockhart was the only man for the Defense Against the Dark Arts job, all that like tea, we don't get to have any of that, right? The conversation about mudbloods also was very, very different in the movie. There's no comparison between a pure blood like Neville to Hermione. There's no comparison between like just pure bloods, mud bloods, like and any of that. That whole, I feel like that was really important to all it says, like Hagrid, that here's another dumbing down of Ron. In the book, Ron has those lines, right? Ron has those amazing, insightful comparisons between Neville and Hermione, giving her her flowers, right? Between
and
her
explaining
abilities.
what it all means. And explaining between the common blood or the dirty blood of the term.
Yeah. And explaining how there's not a wizard who isn't like half blood or less or whatever, right? Like all of that is all Ron's words in the books. And again, they dumb him down and they give those lines to the only adult in the room, which is Hagrid, right? Which is fine. It makes Hagrid a lovable character.
Like a teachable moment.
Yes. However, again, it just takes away from Ron's character so much. We also don't get to see, sorry, go ahead.
The other thing too is in the book, Hermione didn't know what that term meant.
Right.
But in the movie,
she
knows what it means. And she's highly offended. And she's like crying. And she says, because Harry, of course, still doesn't know what it means either way in the book or the movie. Right. And Hermione says it's not a word one typically hears in civilized conversation. So,
yeah, so she
that
knows.
part.
We also don't get to hear about the signed photos that like Hagrid was like, "What's this I hear about?"
It. Yeah,
I thought that was hilarious, and like that's not in the movies either. And he's totally messing with him, right? He's totally joshing him, but still, it's a funny moment. And then we also don't get to see Hagrid's pumpkins. We don't get we don't get the introduction or the little tiny information about Hagrid being expelled when he was at Hogwarts, when he was in his 3rd year, and how he shouldn't be using magic, and how his umbrella is just conveniently around.
It's just a pink umbrella.
Yeah. So like all these little things that as a reader you can try to piece together, or you can kind of just keep in the back of your mind for a later time. These are all
build up the characters, because Ron is super smart and insightful, not some comedic side piece like in the movie.
Yeah, exactly. And also I thought it was really interesting that like Hermione didn't really pass judgment. Hermione being Hermione, right? Hermione being the character who she is, didn't really pass judgment on the fact that Hagrid was using an engorgement charm. We also don't get to hear that Ginny was at Hagrid's hut looking for Harry, and how she might want a signed copy, a signed picture.
Well, because remember, Ginny and Colin are going to start up the Harry Potter fan club.
Right. And And Ron teases about all of this stuff in the books.
Yeah.
In the movie, Ron again is completely oblivious to any of this, right?
Movie Ron is so clueless and I hate it.
He's my absolute favorite character. Book
Yeah,
Ron is
I
my
hate it.
absolute favorite character. And they just do him dirty in the movies.
I hate it.
What else? Oh, I'm trying to go in order so that my brain can function. We don't really get to see Ron snorting slugs. We don't get to see him have so many of these sluggy moments.
Yeah.
Just like the first one and then the one in the bucket. And after that, not so much. We don't know that he had a slug attack all over the Secret Services to the School Award or any of that.
Yeah.
What else? They go off to do their detentions. We don't really hear so much about Ron's detention, right?
No.
Like,
because we're with...
But we don't really get to, like, hear about it or anything.
Yeah, no. We're with Harry when he's in detention with Lockhart and hears the voice.
Yep. Oh, and then when Harry and Ron get back to the dormitory, Hermione is nowhere near. Whereas in the movie, Harry has that conversation with Ron and Hermione.
Well, but see, now we're going into the next chapter, and I stopped it right there. So when Harry leaves detention in the movie, they don't even make it back to the dormitory. They roll into the next stuff that's going on. He runs into Ron and Hermione in the hallway, and then they, start heading off for some other stuff, and some other things happen, which we're going to go into in the next chapter. Whereas this chapter ends with Harry going back to the dorms, Ron coming back to the dorms, and then having that conversation before they go to bed.
That's what I'm saying. Like in the movie, he has that exact conversation with the other two.
As they're in the hallways on their way, and then it starts rolling into other stuff. Like it's not midnight, and he heads back to the dorm through the empty castle, like at the end of the chapter. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like post-dinner.
Yeah. Yeah, totally different. It was totally different. And I went back and purposely looked at the timing, and this whole scene was maybe 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the detail there was missing, and the ways that the conversation went were different. And, it just, very different. Very different. Which brings us to takeaways from this chapter. What are your takeaways from this chapter?
I pretty much already said mine. I literally just wrote down Book Ron, and I busted a Hermione, and I put little hearts next to Book Ron. I did. I put little hearts next to Book Ron because he's my absolute favorite character. I mean, they make him out to be such an idiot in the movies. Such a just, like you said, just a comedic little side piece there. But he comes up with some gems. His comedy is great. It's really good. It's timely. It's funny. But also just the depth of character that he has in the book. It's much better. I love his little lines, his insight, the way that he defended Hermione, or the way that you can start to see how he secretly admires Hermione and her abilities, and how he, like I said, gave her flowers, because we don't really see that at all. It's like a secret admiration for the most part, right?
And I would even add on to that, you see a lot of the Weasley family character altogether, because Fred and George immediately tried to pounce on that. Like, they didn't pull out their wands, they were ready to fight.
Oh yeah, they love a good brawl.
Oh yeah. Fred and George are a little physical.
Yeah, they're down for a little tussle, a little tussle.
Yeah, but immediately all three Weasleys jumped into action. Like, how dare you talk? Well, Alicia screamed it. How dare you talk? You know, but the three Weasleys immediately jumped into action and attack. So you see, like, not only more of Ron's character, but also just the Weasley family kind of morals and character in there too, because you know I love the Weasleys. I love the Weasleys so much. My other takeaway, in addition to, because that was my takeaway too, was like, God, they just did Ron so dirty in the movies.
Yeah,
they really did. Because yes, he's funny, and yes, he's a comedic sidekick, but he's also extremely intelligent and of beautiful moral fiber, and like they really, really diminished him in the movies.
Which also makes the quip that much more hilarious. Because if you know and you experience the depth of his character, then when he has those quippy moments, you're like, man, that timing is just
They just and now as I'm thinking about it, they really did a lot of the Weasleys wrong in the movies. Because we didn't get as much of Fred and George as we could have, because in the books, they're together all the time. Fred and George are Gryffindors too. Like, they're always in the common room when they're in the common room. They play on the Quidditch team with Harry. Like, they're always around.
Well, and when we get into the other books as well, like, their level of intelligence. So, like, yes, I know that they are, like, the jokesters, right? But why do you hear the bangs and all the sounds and the smells and the whatever coming from their room? Because they're highly intelligent. Like, they're using their magic in a way that, like, is advanced. It's very advanced. It's very inventive. It's like inventor status, right? They're doing.
You don't really get that in the movies from Fred and George. And then we've already talked about, I think, almost at length, how Book Jenny is so much more superior to Movie Jenny, because Movie Jenny was like so underwhelming.
Oh yeah, but again, with the moral fiber of the Weasley family.
That too. Yeah, like, so it's just I think the Weasleys got the short end of the stick in the movies, because all of them, we didn't get the level and depth of character that we get in the books from the twins, from Ron, or from Ginny. Matter of fact, I would even venture to say I don't really like Movie Ginny. And Book Ginny is badass. Like, Book Ginny is probably my second favorite character behind Hermione as far as skill and you know, all of that good stuff.
And even Mrs. Weasley and Arthur Weasley. Like, Molly and Arthur also get dirty.
Yeah, they really, really do. So my other takeaway from this chapter had to do with the whole mudblood thing. And the fact that there are 28 pure blood families in the wizarding world. We know this from other canon and stuff. I don't know if it ever comes up in the books or the movies, but we know this from other canon, that there are 28 specific pure blood magical families. And like, literally anybody who has an issue with muggleborns or half-bloods or anything like that, this purity culture that certain pure blood families have. Now remember, the Weasleys are also pure bloods. That's the other thing here, is the Malfoys are pure bloods, and he's nasty, and he says things like mudblood, which, as Hermione says in the movie, is not something that comes up in civilized conversation. So more character here. Not that we didn't already know Malfoy was not a nice person.
Mm-hmm.
But just a little more insight into the kind of person he is and the kind of family he has and the kind of beliefs that he's been brought up with. But the fact that, like, truthfully, if you only dealt with other purebloods, at some point y'all are inbred. So
150,000%.
So,
but here's my thing: are there only 28 in the world or in the UK?
Oh, it might be in the UK. It might be just in their part of the wizarding world. But yeah, even still though, like, if you're trying to only go purebred, y'all are inbred, because
yeah, absolutely.
There's no other.
Like, when the characters, like, as the books develop and stuff, we'll hear more about how this person and that person are related because of this or whatever, right? Like, yeah, we'll get more of that. Oh, you want to?
Yeah. So yeah, that was another, and of course the parallel to real world racism. Was the takeaway there.
Yeah.
Almost like Mudblood is the N-word of the wizarding world.
Yeah.
So those were my takeaways. Like, the Weasleys were done wrong, and you can't call it racism because it's not race, but I don't know, bloodism,
elitism in some
elitism,
way,
classism.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. All right, Mama. You know what time it is?
Oh my God! Is it making magic time?
It's time to make magic.
It's time to make. It's time to make magic. Sorry, he's not going to give you guys much of a on-screen character persona.
I was just going to say there was not a lot of excitement there. He didn't seem real jazzed about it. He looks very comfy and warm, though.
You know what? He loves these PJs. By the way, guys, these are the PJs that I told you about last time, right? In the last Chronicle. I'm wearing them, and Madon loves this type of fabric, like this fuzzy wuzzy feel good fabric, which is why I wrapped him in this jacket, because it also has it. Yeah, he loves to get cozied up. Anyway.
Yeah, and what y'all don't know, what y'all didn't get to see was on a different video call, because of course Eric and I have other video calls that are not recorded for y'all to see. When she first brought home these pajamas, Maron crawled inside of them and, like, wrapped himself in
like, I literally used it like a blanket for him before I actually put them on.
Yeah, because he immediately was like, ooh, this is nice.
Mm-hmm.
Anywho, hi, little cutie patootie. All right, we're making magic.
Okay. I would like to highlight two things that I think that the wizarding community loves, which is obviously, I think, the Nimbus 2001. There are tons of replicas of all the brooms, and I have a little baby Japanese one that I would like to show you guys. And then also I want to see what sort of magical slugs are out there, because I know that there are some. I took a picture and a video when we were at the Wizarding World studio in Tokyo. And the slugs actually moved in the bucket. And I thought that was really cool. They tried to make it, like, as real as possible. Anyway, Japan, if you don't already know, loves what's called gachapon, which is the what are they called?
Gumball machines.
Oh, thank you. Okay, but what is it called when there's not actual gum in there?
I
Are they
mean, it's
still
still a
called
gumball
gumball machine?
machine, essentially, but yeah.
That. And so Japan loves gumball machines and loves putting character stuff in them. Now, they range in price. The Harry Potter ones are always more expensive, but you can get like a cutesy little cheapy one for like 100 yen, which translates into less than $1. Or they start to go up in price, 2 or 3 or 400 yen. I've seen 5,000 yen. And actually, right now, they just released a Niffler series one, which is it's a magical creature that we will learn about.
We've talked about Nifflers a little bit because it's your favorite creature.
Yeah. So at the studio tour, they have a machine, a gumball machine, and those are 1,000 yen, which is
So a little less than $10.
less than $10, like $8 or something. But for like a gumball machine toy, ouch. Anyway,
But it's Harry Potter and it's at the studio tour, so I'm sure people are grabbing them.
yeah. This particular one, I believe, was released 2 years ago, 1.5 years ago, approximately. And it comes with a little stand. It says Nimbus 2001. And you can take it off of the stand. And it literally has some pretty interesting detail. Like on the handle, it also says Nimbus 2001, although you can't really see it. It's teeny tiny. I can barely see it here. But it is all black and it has that like sleek broom tip. It has the foot rests here and you can take it apart. So in order to put it in the machine, to fit it in the little capsule thing, they sell it to you and you have to put it together yourself. But it's really funny the way that like it's shaped. The peg has almost like a concave bottom side so that you can fit it in like a puzzle, and so that you have it exactly the way that it should be, so that you have like the actual shape. Like I can't put this in the opposite way. It won't go in, which is very nice. It's a good like mechanical detail to make it very good. And then you can change this to where, how do I do it? It goes this way and then this way, and you can try to make it fly this way. ちょっと待って. What? You don't approve? I don't know. You balance it to where, oh, I think I got it. Maron, ちょっと待ってね. Mommy has to try to make, I know this scares you. Whatever it is, it balances this way. But I usually just keep it on the stand. I thought this was really cute. So I would like to highlight some brooms and some slugs. So you ready for that?
Enjoy. All right. Are you ready
Yeah.
to make a decision?
Yeah. As ready as I'll ever be.
All right. It is time for Hallows or Horcruxes.
Hit me
And
with
I
it.
find this to be a really interesting question. Personally, I don't know. Anyway, so the question is, would you rather be a pureblood or a mudblood?
For me, I would much rather be a mudblood, in the sense that I already am, not actually, but technically, like, I feel like one. If you don't know, I am Mexican, born in Los Angeles. So my parents are Mexican. Everybody is Mexican, born in Mexico. However, there's lots of talk on my mother's side of some of my family, some of my ancestors coming from Spain, which probably is what makes me so clear-faced, so translucent, like a ghost, shall we say. Because
You
honey,
are a little pale.
you can see my veins through my skin, okay? I cannot go, I'm like a vampire. I can't go out in the sun and not look like a shrimp or like a tomato.
Dude, she burns in like 5 minutes.
Yes. Like, I have to take proper precaution just to like go get the mail. Anyway, but not only that, like, having been the firstborn in my family, being the firstborn in the States, I definitely suffer from identity crisis in my like cultural aspects. Like, am I an Angelino? Obviously, I'm an Angelino. Am I Mexican? I mean, obviously, I'm Mexican. Do I feel 100% Mexican? I would say no, because when I go to Mexico, if I were to go to Mexico, they'd be like, "Oh, she's not Mexican." So yeah, it's interesting. I'm not American. I'm not white. I'm not Mexican. So I already feel that way. But the fun part about this, what I love about this, is I would never see it as a negative thing, to be mixed blood, because I just want to embrace all of that. So, of course, I embrace being an Angelino. I embrace being Mexican. I live in Japan. I embrace all of the Japanese culture and everything that, like, I can learn here, and all of the ways of existing and ways of experiencing a season. Things like that, like, I don't see those definitions or lines. Like, just get the positives from all of these things and enjoy. That's my take.
So I'm going to preface my answer by saying we don't discuss our answers ahead of time. We don't. We agree together on what the question should be. And then when we come on here is when we answer the questions for each other. So we don't know each other's answers.
Right.
First, I want to say I find it quite interesting that you have that cultural clash within the Mexican culture as well, that when you go to Mexico, you're not Mexican enough, I guess. But obviously here in the States, you're not American per se, which feels very biracial. Because those of you who know that I was raised by a white woman, but I am not a white person. I mean, I'm half white in my blood, obviously, but I am not a white person. I identify as a black woman. But I chose Mudblood as well for the same reasons that you did. And I think that's probably why we're besties and why we like finish each other's sentences and are inside each other's brains. Because we're both the type of people that want to take from every experience that we have. And so for me, I'm thinking in the wizarding world, like I love that Harry grew up in the Muggle world and that's all he knew, and then went off to the magical world, and now he's learning all these other things in the magical world, but he has that Muggle world knowledge to fall back on. Unlike someone like, say, Ron, who is a pureblood and doesn't understand Muggle things. And Hermione as well. Yeah, like, and then Hermione as well, like, but Hermione's extremely well read. So the moment she realized she was a witch, she's reading and taking in everything she can. So she does know a lot about the magical world, but she's Muggle born, so she knows about the Muggle world. And so that having knowledge of different things, I find that I like having knowledge about different things, the well-roundedness of being educated and or experienced in multiple things rather than just one.
Yeah.
So I also said Mudblood. Also, I don't want to be inbred, so there's that.
Yeah. I don't having like 12 toes or naturally be like predisposed. Well, I think it doesn't matter. We're all naturally predisposed to illnesses,
Different things.
genetics. Yeah. But I mean, how far can I go by and say that I'm like mixed blood anyway, because I'm not Mexican if my ancestors were Spanish? I don't know how much of my blood, because I mean, I'm not going to go and do ancestry, shamalama ding dongs and whatever, like whatever.
Yeah, I've known too many people who have found out things they didn't want to find out from Ancestry.com.
It's not even that. I would be more than happy. I would love to know the information, but like, to all of you who did 23andMe, good luck.
Oh, yeah.
Now your information is out there.
Yeah. I did do Ancestry, and if you remember, Erica, that's where I found out that my mother is actually white. Because the whole time for 40 some odd years before I did Ancestry.com, my mother always claimed to be Mexican. She thought her father was Mexican. And I was the one who found out. Huh?
She didn't know either.
No, she didn't know. She thought her father was Mexican. And she thought she was half Mexican, half white. But it was me doing the actual ancestry and finding out that my maternal grandfather is actually Italian, and that my maternal grandfather actually immigrated here from Italy, like full-on Italian from Italy, only one generation back. Mama, you're white.
That's so near.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, the stories I found out about my maternal grandfather were so interesting, and he was a sleaze. But
We
like
should go
just
to Italy.
huh?
We should go to Italy.
Maybe.
You don't want to go
I
find
don't
out
know.
about Italy?
Not really.
Mm.
Like I said, the stuff that I found out about him, he was gross. He was
All right.
gross. Like when he came here, I think he was running out from the draft or something, and like he
I
had
mean, I
been
would.
married. Okay, but like he changed his name several times. Who knows what that was about? He was in and out of, different jails and prisons and things, and some of his wives, because he was married multiple times, were questionably young, and yeah, it was not. It was not a heartwarming. Oh, my great grandfather's story.
Gotcha.
So, anywho, we've gotten way off topic.
Halfway.
What I mean, it's us. We do this. But tell the people where to find you, bestie.
I am Poodle Noodle 82 at the Instagrammy place.
And as always, I am Christina McCrary on Facebook, aka Xtina McCrazy on TikTok, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. Once again, if this is your first time coming to see our show, thank you for joining us. If you are returning, thank you for coming back. Tell a friend. And we will see you guys in 2 weeks. Bye, magical friends.